Hey everyone, I'm Bianca. Today I'm going to show you 6 Dollar Tree DIYs for spring. Oh my goodness, let me tell you, it has been a crazy week. Some of you might know already, but I will explain in a little bit. Let's go ahead and get started with today's DIYs.
I've been feeling so small. Watch the clock ticking off the wall.
So this first one is very simple. I have 3 round glass vases from Dollar Tree. And did you see my intro, guys? I'm pretty sure if you saw my last video, you saw it. Oh my god, I have an intro. That's so funny. Well, not funny. I'm just happy I finally have like a legit intro. So I was really trying to focus in on those words on the back of the vases because it was so funny. It said, well, now I kind of forgot. Oh, it said bubble ball, I believe, in the back of it. If you have bought these, then you tell me if that's correct. But anyways, I was just showing you the white florals I got from Dollar Tree that I'm going to be putting inside of there, and just some basic greenery that I have. So I'm going to be removing the sticker tags on the bottom, and I'm using some glue gun for that. I've also purchased this at Dollar Tree a while back. I didn't even know they had these until somebody told me. So what I like to do is just remove what I can and then apply this and let it sit for a few minutes and scrape it off. And then I'm going to wipe the glass really good with just some window cleaner. So Monday, February 15th, Texas experienced a winter storm, which I know many other states get. But for us, our state is just not capable of those freezing temperatures. So that caused rolling blackouts, which means basically that there's too much of a demand on electricity, and they try to, I guess, in rotation turn off our electricity. But I'm not too sure how true that is. Right here, I'm basically, let me just cut my story short for a second. Right here, I am going to start placing the florals inside. I was going to add the eucalyptus, and you will see me add it in there, but I do end up removing them because I just didn't like how big they looked inside of the vases, if that makes sense. So I just use this greenery right here that I'm pulling off. I end up using, I think, a couple of those and then 2 stems of the white florals from Dollar Tree. So anyways, I'm not too sure how true that was as far as the rolling blackouts. We're supposed to go in rotations. We woke up Monday morning and we didn't have electricity for basically 24 hours. We ended up going to my mother-in-law's. That next morning, we came back home because the neighbor told us the lights were back on. They ended up turning off like 5 more times. Guys, I'm literally editing right now, worried that if the electricity might go out at any second. So cutting my story short again, I'm actually going to remove these single little white flowers. Instead of doing that, I literally put in 2 whole stems because it just looks better, but you could totally do that if you want. And then I am going to stack all 3 vases on top of each other. I'm not going to glue them together, which you totally could if you are worried about them, falling over and breaking. Where I'm going to set it, I'm not worried about that. It's totally up to you if you want to keep changing out florals throughout the year or not, or maybe you just, want to buy more vases to have different types. This part's up to you. So with that being said, the moral of my story is that please pray for Texas. Right now at the moment, there are people going through, way worse. I am not complaining at all. I have seen so many, sad and crazy events where people's pipes have been busting. I just keep praying for them and praying that, ours don't bust. And it's really sad right now, and just pray for us, you guys. I'm hoping today it won't go out anymore, but honestly, I'm not even too sure. So honestly, my only complaint about all this was obviously not having power. The main thing was it got super cold in here. Like, I never realized how cold it could actually get. Like, I'm talking about like in the 40s and 50s in here. So that is why the first night we ended up going to my mother-in-law's. But other than that, I have a lot to be grateful for. As far as the vases go, as you can see, I just kept playing around with it till I got it the way I wanted it to look. You can also use different colored florals as well. So I hope you enjoyed this first super easy DIY. The last thing I wanted to say was just thank you so much to everyone who asked how we were doing and sent prayers, our way and for Texas. I really appreciate that over on Instagram and here on YouTube, because I was posting in stories just little things that I could here and there, because we would also lose service from our phones as well. Onto the second DIY, I have 5 Dollar Tree canvases. These are all 5x7s. I actually got inspired by this from a Hobby Lobby one. It looks almost identical, the one I'm about to make, except mine is going to be turned horizontally and the one I saw was more of a vertical frame. So I wouldn't get confused. I moved one to the side because that one I'm not going to remove the canvas, and then the 4 frames I have, the one including in my hand, I am removing the canvases because I want to expose that wooden frame. And then whatever is stuck under the staples, because I'm not removing the staples, I'm just going to trim it off. Now, I have used tons of canvases like this, and I have recycled many, and I never know what to do with all of them. So that's why I didn't bother to try to save these. And then I'm going to sand them down with my sanding block from Dollar Tree so I can paint them. Now I'm going to use this hazelnut chalk paint from Waverly. I got it at Walmart for about $5, I believe. And I'm going to paint all 4 frames. To give it more of the look that I want, I'm adding some of this antique parchment from Apple Barrel in matte, and I'm just going to kind of dry brush some on top and wipe off the excess. You can do this however you want, but I do dry brush it at first and it kind of seemed a little too harsh, so then I did start dipping the brush in a little bit of water and remove some of the excess water before brushing it on, because then it would just take longer to dry. I have those 4 frames on the side. The 5th canvas that I am going to leave the actual canvas on, I'm going to use my moss chalk paint on here. And so what I'm going to do with this is, again, I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And I also am taking that same brush that I have some of the antique parchment creamy paint on. And so that's going to help lighten up the green a little bit and look more spring-like. Now I'm going to take this Dollar Tree wall decal and I'm going to cut out the word 8, and I'm going to apply that to the center of the green canvas. So I have made many window panes on my channel, even though this is not really a window pane. It's practically a whole big sign that I'm making. So that's why through this part, I'm just going to fast forward and show you. It's just gluing all 4 together. It's really simple. If you haven't done it before, then I will definitely just show you real quick how I glue all of them together. I'm measuring about 4 inches on the sides and 3 inches on the top and bottom. So once I get that, I'm gonna mark where the frame is at so I can pick up the frame and add hot glue to keep it in place. For a little extra support, I like to add crab sticks, or in my case right now, tumbling tower blocks to the back right here, just to keep the frames all together. For DIY number 3, we are using an 8x10 frame and a little sign. Both are from Dollar Tree. Now, I was honestly debating with myself to actually show you this specific DIY because it really didn't come out the way I wanted it, and I will tell you the reasons when I get to that part. I mean, I went ahead and decided to show you because maybe you could come up with a different way. And another reason as well is that I couldn't go to any store with this whole winter storm. Normally I would go to the Dollar Tree and pick up what I wanted, but I couldn't because everything was closed. There was ice on the road. So for the frame, I'm using that same hazelnut paint, and I give it about 2 to 3 coats. Now for this specific part, I would have rather used a canvas frame. I also did the same thing I did with that faith sign, and I added a little bit of that antique parchment on top of there just to give it the same type of color that I had for the last DIY. I'm going to glue the sign on top of the frame with some hot glue. Once I do that, I'm going to add a crab stick to the back where they meet. That way it stays in place. I'm going to take one of these giant crab sticks from Walmart. These are only a couple of dollars there, so I'm going to take one of those. And then I'm also going to use the Dollar Tree crab sticks. I am taking 3 from there. I'm going to paint all 4 of them the same method I've been using today with the hazelnut and some of that creamy antique parchment paint. After that, I place the glass back in the frame, and then I'm also going to place that white inner little paper frame back in there, if that makes sense. And I'm going to add hot glue on the corners just to keep that in place, and the prongs or the little hardware pieces are going to be pushed down to also help it stay in place. And the reason I added the glass back was just to kind of keep the weight proportion to that top sign that I glued at the top. It's not really heavy, but it is a little bit heavier than a Dollar Tree frame because the Dollar Tree frames are not that heavy duty. So once I did that, it was well proportioned. So I was totally fine with all of this part. Now with the whole basket part of this DIY, I didn't really like it too much. I had a different vision for that, which I'll let y'all know in a second. So I'm adding the large giant crab stick right here, and then I'm going to add the other 3 at the top, and you'll see how I placed them. This was basically just for detail because, like I said, I had it visioned in my mind how I wanted it, and I'll just trim off the excess. For the last part to this DIY, I am using this Dollar Tree galvanized holder that has been around at Dollar Tree for a long time. I'm going to add just some floral foam in there and more of these white flowers and just arrange them how you want. So for this part, I originally wanted to use an Easter basket. If you've seen my previous DIYs, I love using those Easter baskets because I like to cut them in half and paint them how, you know, whatever color that I need to, and then I will add it to, you know, whatever piece of decor, and it looks just like so pretty and very high end. So that's what my vision was, and I do think it would have looked better, but like I said, you can do it how I did it, or you can try it another way if you have a different thing in mind. For DIY number 4, I have 3 more canvases. I have 2 5x7s and 1 8x10. So the reason for that is the 8x10 is going to go at the bottom. I'm making a crate, by the way. You're probably like, okay, what is this? I'm making a crate, and then the 5x7s will go on the side. So I actually thought about this because I saw something like this at a store and I completely forgot. I think it was at Marshall's. I removed the canvases from the 2 smaller frames, and I'm also going to do it to the 8x10, but I just wasn't sure yet at this point. So for my crazy idea, I have this non-slip rug underlay from Dollar Tree. I grabbed it because it looked exactly like how I wanted to make the crate, you know, the one that I saw at Marshall's. So I figured it'd be so cool to add this to the 2 6x8 frames on the sides of the little crate. I'm going to trace it, cut it out with my scissors, and then I'm going to hot glue it onto the side where these staples are at.
Been traveling alone, but now there's you.
And as I'm adding glue, as you can see, I do sort of stretch out the material just so it's not too loose. Now for the 8x10 frame that's going at the bottom, I removed the canvas because I wanted the wood tone to show, but I'm going to go ahead and glue that canvas back onto the frame where the staples are at. This is just so you can't see through the bottom of the frame or the crate. I was going to add poster board as well, but there kind of was no point. It's going on a table or a, you know, console table, and it really wouldn't have mattered. And I did cut out the, I always say poster board. I did cut out the foam board. I was gonna apply it, but you can see it, and it just didn't look right. Now I'm gonna glue all 3 frames together. So this is how it's gonna go. I'm gonna add my hot glue and glue them. I should have gotten a 4th frame. Reason being is because the bottom 8x10, to complete the look of this crate, I could have just added another canvas at the top without the actual canvas, just the wooden frame at the top, and it would have completed the look perfectly. But again, I couldn't go to Dollar Tree. So that's why I had to improvise. So this was me improvising. I am using some tumbling tower blocks. I'm taking 5 and 5, so I have 10. I'm gonna glue 5 together, and I'm gonna use my Dollar Tree ruler or square, and it's gonna help me keep the tumbling tower blocks straight. So once I have those glued together, I'm gonna glue them at the top of my crate just to make it have a complete look.
I don't even care if my soul is gone. So many words that I should have said. Not concerned about how to live instead.
So I'm gonna glue it right up here at the top. So now you see my vision for this. Don't you think that the 8x10 frame, you know, the other canvas, would have looked perfect on the top right here? I mean, I wouldn't have had to add these blocks, but like I said, I had to improvise. So if you decide to make this, you can even make a bigger one if you want. Hopefully I've given you some type of inspiration for a DIY crate. And I also forgot to mention, you can see that craft stick in between the 6x8 frame and the 8x10. I added that there just for extra support. On to DIY number 5. I am using a paint stick from Home Depot. These come in a 3-pack for $1, and this is in the paint section. And I have 2 Dollar Tree drawers. So in order to get more out of this, I always use the outside of it and inside of it. So it's like a little drawer, or it says, you know, wood box. You can pull out the inside and use that block as well. So I'm going to paint my paint stick with the hazelnut paint, and I'm only doing this alone. I'm not going to add anything else to it. And now I'm going to paint the 4 wooden blocks with the moss paint. It's the chalk paint I used earlier. And I'm going to do this with some water and the paint. Now, to put this together, I am going to hot glue the first one down at the bottom, and this is going to be the one that's going to hold it all together. So what I mean is I will add some weight in here just so that way I can set it and it won't like fall over because it's lopsided. And you could also see that the little butterfly cutout won't be showing either because it's going to be turned around. And to all 4 of these, I am adding a generous amount of hot glue. And I'm only going to be putting a few stems in each one, so it's not going to be heavy at all. The only one that's going to be a little heavy is this one that I'm gluing right now. I decided to lay it down to keep it in frame for y'all. It's always kind of hard with bigger pieces like this because I'm trying to keep it in frame, but I'm also trying to make it a little easy for myself to get it right, or just to make sure it's in the middle and it's straight, it's not crooked. What I did was just measure in between, and they're all about 3 inches from each other. So now I'm going to hot glue the next one. So now that I have all 4 of them on here, I have the little pebble that I have outside. So you see, without it, it would kind of fall to the side. But now that I put the pebble inside, it stays in place. So that's what I decided to put in there for the weight. Now I'm going to use these pretty spring flowers that I got from Hobby Lobby last year. I'm just going to cut off some stems with my stem cutters, stick them in each little box, and I do have floral foam in each one. So on to the last DIY for today. I have a square wreath form from Dollar Tree. Now I've actually been having this one for a really long time and I just found it. I haven't used it. So I figured this would be perfect because I had this, another vision in my head on what I wanted to make. I also have two different types of nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. So I have that more darker one and that real light creamy one. So I'm going to start off with the more darker nautical rope, and as you can see there are three twisted together. So I'm going to untangle them and I'm going to just use one of the three. So I'm cutting small pieces of the nautical rope because it's just easier to wrap around if it's not too long. So what I'm going to do is add hot glue at the end of that, start at the bottom of the wreath form in one corner, and I'm only going to wrap the bottom two of the wreath form. I add a little bit more to the top just so that stays in place since it is the beginning of this. Then I just start wrapping, and if you need to add more hot glue anywhere, you can do it. Once you get to the end of that piece you're working with, just add hot glue. What I started to do toward the end of this wreath, once I started to get like in the rhythm of everything, I started to actually stick the end of that inside of the rope instead, and it was way easier. So once I was done with the outside part of this, you just wrap the remaining little area and then add hot glue to the back. So now I'm going to cover the rest of the wreath form with the lighter nautical rope. I'm going to use this family decal from Dollar Tree. When I sat it down on top of this, I really liked the way that looked. So I decided to keep that white background. And by doing that, I'm just going to cut off the end of this, like the tag area. And I'm going to place this on top of a piece of foam board. And I'm going to trace it out. I'm going to cut it with my box cutter. It's just easier that way. It's honestly easier than using scissors. Before I glued down that sign, the last thing I did with the rope was take one of the three pieces from the lighter creamy rope and covered the rest of that wreath form, so the ones that are going horizontally. And then the last thing I did was glue the sign down, or the piece of foam board down, and then I applied the family decal to the top of it. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next video.